Don't be shy. Thank you so much. Thank you. The speakers of Harold not quite. It's wonderful to have you all back, and it's just beautiful to be back in this wonderful room where the Insakas were born and have been blossoming until COVID unfortunately put us on hold. It's wonderful to be back to see people in real life in 3D. And a warm welcome to those who are joining us online as well. It's lovely that we can be able to share this moment with people across the world, especially our partners across African countries. And so a warm welcome to you all. I will say a little bit about the Insaka when we begin, but for now, let us, with the respect that we have been taught since we were children, to ask the owner of the house to welcome us home.
Thank you. I can't tell you how lovely it is to have you all here, both in person and online. St Cross College is one of the graduate colleges of Oxford. It's international, it's multidisciplinary, it's cross-disciplinary, and it's egalitarian. So I think it's a perfect home for the Insakas, and it's a place where everyone talks and discusses with colleagues. So it's such a joy to have you all back. For those of you who may be able to get some glimpses from the room, but those of you who are actually in the room, we've also got some wonderful posters up from an exhibition which started off at St Anthony's. Do take some time if you're here with us in the room to have a look at these posters, they're fantastic. And it's really all about talking, sharing, being together, and I cannot express my gratitude that everybody has come back and that Anne and Kevin have agreed to bring the Insakas back to St Cross. So have a wonderful evening and engage. It's the whole point. Ask questions, listen, and let our speakers know how much you appreciate that they're with us this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Carol. They say home is where the heart is, and our heart has been at St Cross for a long time. And we are ever so grateful that you make a home for us whenever we come. For those who are Insaka faithfuls, it's wonderful to see you and welcome back. For those who are new to the Insaka experience, I will say one or two things about it. So the AfOx Oxford Initiative is a cross-university platform that brings all of Africa's interests across the university in one room. Our vision is to make Africa a strategic priority for Oxford, and we aim to do this through supporting, facilitating equitable and sustainable partnerships between our colleagues in Oxford and peers across various African institutions. It's been going on for about 5, going on to 6 years now, and we are so delighted to have a wonderful, vibrant network of academics, students, and innovators that are geared towards supporting, addressing various development challenges across Africa. The Insaka is a way of building a platform that we can all engage on issues that we would be interested in, but not necessarily have the time to talk and hear about. So we have 2 speakers that are usually drawn from different disciplines, and we talk about issues as long as they're interesting, no pressure, and linked to our research question in Africa. So today we are relaunching the in-person Insaka, a hybrid version with our colleagues joining us online. And our first speaker is Professor Kalpana Hiralal. Kalpana is one of the AfOx Senior Visiting Fellows, and we'll talk a bit about the AfOx programs at the end after we've heard from our speakers. Kalpana is also a history professor at the School of Social Sciences at Harvard College, the University of UKZN, KwaZulu-Natal. On top of that, she's a fellow at the Oxford International Department of International Development, ODID, and at Wolfson College. And we're delighted that this ODID and Wolfson have partnered with us alongside other departments and colleges to host the AfOx Fellows. Now we're going to hear from Kalpana about her research work on the role of Indian women in the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa. And I'm not going to embarrass her with reading her entire CV. I will let her come and introduce herself and share with us what she's got. We've got a second speaker, so hold your questions and we will respond to all of them at the end of the 2 speakers. Good? Excited? Yeah. Get this going.
Thank you to AfOx, thank you Anne for a very warm welcome. My name is Professor Kalpana Hiralal. I'm from the Department of Historical Studies at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. So thank you all for coming, and to AfOx, Indo, and ODID for giving me this opportunity to present my book, Sisters in the Struggle, Women of Indian Origin in South Africa's Liberation Struggle. Apologies that I do not have any copies of the book. We tried to get them on time, but unfortunately there were some delays. But I'll give you a sneak preview of what the book is all about. Okay, so let me start by providing the context of this book. Now, several years ago, I received an email from the late veteran anti-apartheid campaigner and former head of the United Nations Center Against Apartheid, Dr. Enuga Reddy, and it read, I quote, "Dear Kalpana, are you interested in working on a who's who of Indian women who went to jail or was persecuted in the struggle for freedom? It was an idea that I truly relished. And besides, it was one of my core research areas, and the study actually did not commence immediately as I had teaching commitments and my relocation from the former University of Durban Westville, UDW, to Howard College, University of Natal, was time consuming. However, I began the research in earnest late in 2008, early 2009. And together with Enuga's help, I tried to locate as many women as possible of Indian origin in the liberation struggle. So the aim of this book really is to address a gap in South African historiography, seeking to document the contributions of women of Indian origin in South Africa's road to democracy. It highlights their roles at different historical periods in South African history from the turn of the century till the end of apartheid. And through these kind of individual profiles, we get a better understanding of what factors informed and shaped their political consciousness, the complexities of their activism, and the challenges that they faced, as a white mother, woman, activist, so on and so forth, as well as the ways in which they kind of perceived their experiences. In addition, the involvement of South Africans of Indian origin is a very under-researched aspect of the larger South African historiography, and rarer still is the involvement of and participation of women of Indian origin. So what makes the South African women of Indian origin a book? Why did I write it? And in the context of why is it such a worthy of a separate and distinct study? So my choice in documenting, firstly, are for personal reasons, in that as a young girl living in one of apartheid's designated Indian areas, attending an Indian school and Indian university, and being part of the student activism in the 1980s have shaped my identity and being part and memories of this period. Indian women were not a monolithic ethnic group, and this multiplicity of differences had an impact on how they engaged in the politics of resistance. They embraced multiple identities and oppression during apartheid in the context of race, class, gender, language, so on and so forth. And by focusing on Indian women, I hope to offer a deeper understanding of the complexities and varying meanings of being Indian at different historical junctures, and how this identity shaped their political ideology and activism. How can we come to know and understand their culture of struggle and resistance as a heterogeneous ethnic group? This is perhaps best reflected through an examination of their inner lives, listening to their voices and narratives. And these diverse experiences, I believe, are yet to be documented. I also wanted to highlight through these women's profiles that women of Indian origin perceive their participation in the kind of the broader liberation struggle in South Africa. And one of the underlying themes of this book is their contribution to non-racialism. They did not kind of embrace an ethnic Indian identity, but a very inclusive South African identity. So barriers of race, class, religion, language, etc. kind of disappeared and became insignificant as they fought alongside other racial groups. Only as a collective group did they perceive constructive change to be possible. And they fought alongside women of other racial groups and defined themselves collectively as the oppressed. The political ideals they embraced and the parties they affiliated with and supported and nurtured non-racialism. The biographies also highlight women's experiences within these kind of diverse political parties, and thereby kind of shifts the post-apartheid liberation narratives, which to some extent has been dominated by the journey of the ANC to kind of other political organizations. So I'm talking about like the non-European United Front, the non-European Unity Movement, the Natal Indian Congress, the Transvaal Indian Congress, the Black Consciousness Movement, and so on. And who collectively played a significant role in South Africa's road to democracy. And this book kind of maps out a 100-year resistance, and this also allows insights into identity shifts over generations, ways in which these women kind of challenged enforced identities. So Indian, African, white, and colored of colonialism and apartheid. Being Indian and Indian woman was contested, deliberated, and problematized at different historical periods and evolved over time. For example, identity politics prevailed in the first half of the 20th century with the formation of the NIC in 1894. So however, this changed when progressive members of the NIC in the 1940s and 1950s supported a multiracial alliance to defeat apartheid. Moreover, in the 1970s, politically conscious Indian women embraced the Black consciousness movement, which stressed political solidarity and collective identity. They subsequently discarded the so-called Indian tag and identified as Black Africans. This book redresses an important gap in our understanding of South African women's experience in colonial and anti-apartheid struggles, and takes cognizance of the broader context of that individual's life. It also fosters an understanding or recognition of shared histories and struggles in South Africa's road to democracy. Okay, so very quickly then, I'll go through the structure of the book. It has 3 volumes mapping out the women's resistance between 1900 to about 1994. There are 61 women's profiles, and each volume is prefaced by summaries and contextualizes the socio-economic political conditions at different historical periods and how this kind of shaped one's political consciousness, modes of resistance, and activism. Volume 1 focuses on the period from 1900 to 1940s. It highlights the stratification of the oppressed communities in terms of legislation and political resistance in the context of the Satyagraha campaigns of 1907 and 1913, as well as in the 1940s, the passive resistance campaign. And this community struggle is problematized in the summaries to highlight the complexity of resistance in the context of gender, race, and ethnicity. So these are just some of the women that I showcase and who have their profiles in volume 1. And this volume has 18 profiles. The profiles of the women, and this is volume 1, this is volume 1. The profiles of the women reveal how women also negotiated, challenged, and accommodated traditional gender norms in the context of male-dominated resistance. Volume 2 focuses on the 1950s and 1960s, and it is prefaced by a summary as well. It has 27 profiles, and the summary highlights the shift in politics amongst the oppressed groups, in particular, the move towards non-racialism, the formation of multiracial organizations like the Federation of South African Women. And you can see this collective resistance, particularly among women of all races, that was noticeable in the 1956 anti-caste campaign. The women's profiles reveals how Indian women during this period began to kind of rethink their identity as Indians and to shift towards more Indo-African unity, and they struggled with mobilizing political support within the community. Volume 3 highlights the significance of youth activism as well as the Black consciousness movement and its impact on Indian women. And the 16 profiles reveal how women embraced the Black consciousness movement and began to shed the Indian tag and identify as Black Africans. And they also challenged traditional notions of Indian female sexuality and were highly critical of ethnic organizations such as the Natal Indian Congress and the Transvaal Indian Congress, which were still in existence. And the last volume, it documents the role of family members, particularly wives and mothers and spouses who assisted the struggle in various ways. And I believe the contributions of families, its inclusion in this volume, shows how family members who may not have been active in formal politics, yet contributed significantly to the liberation struggle. And this book kind of seeks to show that the liberation struggle must not only be seen from the vantage point of formal politics. So basically, the Sisters in the Struggle then consists of 3 volumes, and each volume is actually prefaced by a summary, just to provide a brief overview of women's resistance and to see how that kind of changed and evolved over a period of time. Okay, so I will end off by giving my thanks. In conclusion, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the following: the AfOx team, in particular, David Kerr, Kevin Marsh, and Anne McKenna, who kept on reminding me that there was no pressure for this presentation. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here at Oxford. It has been a very memorable experience, both academically and personally. To faculty members at the Oxford Development International Development ODID, many thanks to Professor Diego Sanchez, Professor Nikita Sood, Professor Laura Raghu, as well as Josie Naldo for your support and kindness, and for making my stay here such a pleasant and memorable one. And to my thanks also to the India Oxford Initiative for partnering with ODID and AfOx to host this event. And last but not least, to my AfOx fellows who are here today, thank you for your support, and this fellowship has led to lifetime friends, which I will always cherish. And thank you to the audience for attending. Thank you.
It's wonderful when you don't have to stand and hover around a speaker, to say, time's up, time's up. Thank you so much for that. Absolutely well-timed and very riveting presentation, Kalpana. There's a lot to unpack from that, from what you've said and how it features in today's struggles in South Africa. I'm sure we'll peel some of those onions in the Q&A session. At this point, I would like to welcome our second speaker, and we can pull our questions together at the end of this talk. Professor Shadreck Chirikure is a member of the House, is no stranger to AfOx or to St. Cross for that matter. And he's given the talk before, so some of you might remember from that previous conversation. He's a professor of archaeology at the moment at the School of Archaeology and Anthropology here, and we're delighted to hear from him. And I'm just waiting for my colleague to set up. I could go on rambling forever, but in the meantime, let's have Shadreck introduce himself and give us an overview of this talk while Chimama sets up. In the meantime, you can get Kalpana's book from Waterstones. We were not able to get them here for you to get signed copies, but she's still in Oxford for a couple more days. So if you want, you can order a book and find some time for some signing.
I was just saying to myself, if I was going to write a book, then the title would be Brothers in the Struggle. The plan was that the PowerPoint would not work, and I don't have to talk, you see.
too bad.
Don't be too excited. You will never know with the technology. You see. Next. Just before you go. Next. And I have 50 minutes.
No pressure.
Oh, okay. Let's do it this way. Anyway, folks, thank you so much. On a very lighter note, but perhaps a very honest one, all of you and myself, we share one thing in common, and that is neither yourselves nor myself knows what I'm going to talk about. There's a reason for that, and the reason is David K. So what happened was that David said, look, can you consider giving us a talk? Then I said, I have nothing to say. So David said, well, just find something. You just come and stand up and say something, right? And I also saw wine bottles outside there. So because I've said something, why don't we go and party? But anyway, the most interesting thing then was there's a topic that I wanted to talk about, and it's related to the subject that I sometimes work on, and that is the topic of the materials and materiality associated with cannabis, right? So David said, no, you are not going to say anything about that. Then Chimeme said, well, why don't you just throw the name archaeology, heritage, and maybe sustainable development, and then we see what comes out. Right. So one housekeeping rule though, because it's David and because it's Chimeme, if you don't like what I'm going to say, you blame David and Chimeme. If you like it, I take credit. 0% liability. Right. So, can archaeology and heritage enable development in sustainable development in Africa? Well, this is a topic that I've been working on over the past 10, 15 years, and some of the research from North Africa to Southern Africa, and funded by some of these organizations. And indeed, one of the most important strategic documents to be produced by the African Union, the Agenda 2063, it highlights the role that cultural heritage must play in Africa achieving its Agenda 2063. So culture and heritage, they are fundamental pillars according to the African Union. And so the question of using the creative arts, other types of heritage, as well as restoration and preservation of heritage. The key question then is, can we actually mobilize Africa's heritage and use it as an enabler for sustainable development? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? And what might the future look like? So there are some painful facts when we are talking about Africa. There is increasing population at the moment. So if the rate of population increase continues at the rate of the present, then by 2050, Africa will have the largest, one of the largest populations, and half of that population will be the youth. So that is actually one maybe alarming statistic, And also, Africa is confronted with deteriorating weather, so climate extremes. And also, Africa is also increasingly a hungry continent, in the sense that, so when you combine all of these things, and Africa has archaeology, very stunning, yeah, maybe better than Stonehenge, I guess. It has a lot of heritage and so on. Can we mobilize that to achieve sustainable development? So that is the big question. And what makes this a very difficult challenge, and what I think the AU perhaps they did not also consider that in detail, is the impact of colonialism, where this is the map of Africa during colonialism, partitioned into spheres of influence of different European powers. But one of the things was that Africa was considered to be a dark continent, and colonialism, in some cases, was about extraction of resources. It was also about inculcating a sense of inferiority in the Africans. So what we see also is a scenario whereby some of the Africans started to disown their heritage, right? If you are Kikuyu and you are given a Kikuyu name, you change to an English name, right? If you are also, Shona, and you are given a Shona name, then you say, no. You go to an English name or to a French name just to sound exotic. Yeah? But that's also separating from one's heritage. So how do you then make that disconnect from almost a century of saying this is South Africa, this is South Africa? Now we are saying, well, let's use that darkness. It's our heritage. Can we achieve sustainable development? That's a contradiction. That's a tension. Can it work? Let's see what the following slides have. And the other thing is that the reason why I have this slide is just to show you, and that applies to even visitorship and so on. So African countries do not trade amongst each other, which also means that Africans don't visit each other's country, right? And on the basis of this, statistic, you can only see that just 2% of African trade is within the continent. The rest is outside. So as a Zimbabwean, if I need to go to Nigeria, I need a passport. A Nigerian, if you want to go to Kenya, maybe that might have changed. Let's say the DRC, they will need a passport, right? That is what heritage are we using there? Perhaps that's the heritage of colonialism or something like that, but certainly it doesn't make things any better. And also, the poorest kind of people in the world at the moment, they are in Africa. Do the poor people enjoy tourism? Do they visit sites? Do they do sightseeing? Or those are some of the things that are reserved for the rich? So that is also one of the challenges. Why, there is a big question in terms of, well, if you are to use heritage to kickstart sustainable development, where do you even start? When people don't even have the means? And also, Africa is a hungry continent. It's also confronted with malnourishment. So, if you are hungry, do you think of going to visit the majestic Victoria Falls, or the first thing that you think is, where is my next meal going to come from? But also, on the brighter side, Africa does have fantastic heritage, and both tangible and intangible. And these instruments, they are known as mbira, and there's quite a bit in the Peace Rivers. If Ed McKenna had not said, no, I was going to play you some tune and maybe actually dance for you, because it's one of the things that we do in the village. But the good thing about the mbira is that it's now part of the intangible world heritage. But back then, I remember when I was growing up, because my mom, we go to church. If you try to play the mbira, the Bira then said, no, 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 no. This is something that is associated with demons, something that is unheavenly, ungodly. That's the work of the devil, right? And then most people my age in the village, you wouldn't play that, right? But that is also heritage. Can the Bira feed the masses, right? Certainly, yesterday I had a very interesting engagement with a colleague whom I might perform Bira with. And you know, he was saying, yeah, here there is appetite for Bira. So here you can use the Bira to contribute to sustainable development. But in my village, where we feel that is something to do with the ancestors, and that's not something that we do, we go to church. You better try your luck very hard. And also, some of the heritage that Africa has is natural and is actually quite stunning. So these are mountain gorillas, Virunga National Park, which is also threatened with mining and so on. But I just want to draw your attention to the big five. Those your elephants, buffalo, and etc., which are some of those premier animals for tourism, for safaris. You know, the Serengeti, if you are in Nairobi, and so on. But the key thing then is that there is a lot of coloniality associated with that. So who defines the big five? So the question that I have for you is, you don't have to give me the answer. Why is the giraffe not part of the big five? Is it bigger or smaller than a leopard? You know, I don't know. But these are some of the things that we, you know, is who defines this, whose frenzy is tickled by this. I showed you the map of Africa under colonialism, and these are some of the people that contributed a lot towards the liberation of different countries in Africa. So Independence Square in Maputo, Samora Machel, Zimbabwe, and most of these countries would not have gained independence without the efforts of Machel and so on. And this is the African Renaissance Monument in Dakar, Senegal. And these are Africans honoring, you know, the liberation heritage. But how many Africans, you know, would go to Senegal and see and say that, well, I have come here for the specific purpose of seeing the African Renaissance Monument, or to see Machel's statue in Independence Square. Or there's also another baggage, because some of these elites, when they came in power, they started, you know, putting hands in the cookie jars, you know, taking things and so on. So it's also a heritage of corruption. Should we want to be associated with that? That's also another challenge. But nevertheless, liberation heritage is important, is vital. You know, we need to be engaging with it. But unfortunately, we can't use it for sustainable development, or we haven't really fully exploited its potential. If we have been to Angola, there is that fantastic Pico Valley monument, you know, which is standing tall. The interpretive center is great. So when I went there, I was saying, oh, wow, I hope there would be visitors to this place. Otherwise, it would be one of those white elephants. Is African heritage all about celebrating the colonial? The colonial in the sense that who defines the heritage that the Africans call heritage? Who does it for them, right? Let's think back of the big five. We are told that this is your big five. Even if we know that there are things that are bigger. Well, some of you say this is big five, but that's my totem. Elephant is my totem, eh? Yeah, that's my family, right? So why would you say, you know, this is something? So cultural differences and so on. How do we go around that? And coming back to one of the subjects that I talk about, so this is Great Zimbabwe, which is in some cases very popular because of the dry stone walls, and there's this fort which is in the museum at Great Zimbabwe. Legend says that if the people in this room, if we were born a little bit earlier as in the 1860s, then we could have seen this fort talking. It could walk and it could talk, right? So if you like gossip like myself, that's company. right? Just save this pot and then it will travel. Those are the local myths, those are the local legends. But then, if you say so, then this is backward. No, you can't say it. It's also something to do with the ancestors. Let's talk about the walls. That's architecture. In any case, it was believed that Africans didn't build that anyway. So it has nothing to do with Africans. Remember their record. Can we then mobilize this type of heritage and that type of heritage and use that to achieve aspiration 5 of the African Union? So that's another example here, which is Tami World Heritage Site in southwestern Zimbabwe. The key questions are, how many locals visit some of these places, right? How about African visitors? So just this site, I got it from the website. So to visit Kami, you would need $3 and so on. If you are non-residents, $10 US. How many visitors do you need to visit this place for there to be sustainable development, right? But if you lived in Zimbabwe at a specific time, maybe that there is, because even Elon Musk doesn't have this much money, isn't it? $50 trillion. That's a legitimate banknote, all right? So that's also heritage. And then if you are in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, sometimes there is xenophobia. So you don't also see Africans crossing borders to see the beauty or the heritage of other African places. So there is all that disconnect and so on, which makes it very, very difficult to then harmonize, the heritage and to mobilize it for development. Another ironic case is this is my brother Munyara's field, and this is finger millet. So, as was previously associated with the poor, you can't eat finger millet, it's for the poor, but now it's food for the rich because it's organic, it has got a lot of dietary fiber, and so on. So even the poor, they can't afford their own heritage. It's for the rich. It's one of those interesting things. So just to wrap up, I see Amy saying that, you must move away from the podium. The kinds of issues that we are talking about then is that I have tried to say that, well, Africa is rich in stunning heritage, very diverse, and which, if it were in other parts of the world, that would have been used, to sustain a development. But there are a number of challenges, and that heritage is not being utilized for that development. Africans don't visit each other. They sometimes we are not proud in our heritage, and so on. But there are key issues that sort of strive for that. Is the curriculum suitable for that? Right? What we teach in school, from elementary, from early ECD, whatever, from reception right up to university. Do we allow people to, do we give them the right skills so that they can use heritage for sustainable development? If you don't know how to balance it, if you don't know what a trial balance is, can you run a business on heritage? What will you be doing, right? So most of what we train is just so backward looking, right? It's in the past. That's where Zinjanthropus was running in Tekana, right? We leave it there. And some folk who is doing business would then say, okay, I have a business sense. That doesn't benefit heritage people. That doesn't benefit, the communities and so on. So that's a disconnect, number one. So archaeologists, heritage managers, we don't have those skills to do that. What I can do is just to tell you that, this is a handex, and that's it. What do you do with it? Nothing. I don't have anything to say. Can I use it for economic development? I will be lying to you if I say I can. I can't, right? But maybe I need to convince you. So the other thing is that archaeologists, heritage managers, and the like, we don't sit on agenda setting tables. So heritage archaeology is very important in terms of climate change. I don't remember any archaeologist that was on the advisory board to COP26. Never. You don't find archaeologists there. You don't find them where they discuss food shortages. No, you don't find an archaeologist there, right? So, but that's the heritage that we are not using. The experience, free experience, right? So most of you, I would assume you have applied for jobs. They say we want experience, right? We have the experience from the past. We are not using it, and we hope to achieve sustainable development. What helps? Then there's also the other thing about neophobia, where in the urban areas, the traditional foods, they are now something of, you can't eat that and so on. So you need to create awareness again for people to connect with some of that heritage, to connect with some of those foods and so on. And also at the churches, they are also a new heritage in Africa. But some of at times, there's a disjuncture between the beliefs, the believers and the non-believers. And in some cases, you are told, like I was saying, the mbira is something that is seen as backward and so on. But it's also part of your heritage. I don't see any reason why I should not play the mbira in church. Really. In fact, it makes it so nice. Why can't we harmonize the two? But because of these issues, then, my conclusion then is going to be that, well, if we talk of Agenda 2063 and using heritage, I think the title of this paper is very appropriate. It's more than, it's more about hope. But hope is a very dangerous word, you see, because you only hope. If it was about action, yes. Then we are talking, but hope, we can hope for all we like, But nothing really changes. I think my boss Ellen is about to chase me from here. So what I wanted to say is just to end by saying good night. But the problem then is that there's this African proverb which says not everyone who says good night goes to sleep. So as you remain at work, I hope you will be discussing some of the things that I was raising. And with that, I thank you.
You can trust Shadreck to start by throwing everybody under the bus and ending up throwing the audience under the bus. Thank you so much, Shadreck. That was really wonderful. A lot of questions to think about. We try and have these two talks that are from seemingly different, backgrounds, but there's always a connection that emerges when you speak. And there's issues of identity, who you are, what identity people ascribe you to, and what identity you choose to claim for yourself. So there's going to be some really interesting conversation, I hope. And people online, thank you so much for keeping up and tuning in and engaging with the questions that are being raised. So we're looking forward to getting those questions online. But as you hear those, could we have some from the room? And if you could please speak up. I think this witchcraft over here is going to rotate and pick up our voices as we speak. But try and be audible for the people online to hear us. So let's take a couple of questions, either for Shadreck or for Kalpana, from either of their talks, and those online will also be asking your questions in the room as well. Who wants to have a go? Who's ready to challenge Shadreck on his assumptions? Ooh, it's on. Okay, at the back, and then here, and then Godwin.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I was very curious to see how data archaeology is sustainable. And it brought some things to mind. I worked in energy, and there was a relationship that we saw between how we used to build houses in the past versus how we build houses post-colonialism, and how it's not fixed to the climate in Africa, because a lot of inefficient high energy consumption. And you also mentioned food as well, how some foods you stopped eating them. And it seems like there is a lot of importance in understanding heritage and building like the future of development in so many different ways. How do you think we can change people's sort of perception as well as understanding of the importance of heritage? Because I'm sure there are lots of other things we haven't discovered. This is just two things that have come up. So I'm sure there are lots of other areas that our heritage can contribute towards. Do you have any ideas on how we can change these perceptions or include heritage managers into?
Yes, that's why I was given a job here actually. On a more serious note. Yes, first of all, let's go to the basics, right? What is heritage? So in most cases, heritage, then some define it as an inheritance from the past. So it is such a very broad field. But what we need to do is to go back to the basics. We need to go back, catch them while they are young. So start teaching them, about the significance of. So some of my work is in a little bit in terms of health, nutrition, a little bit of pharmacogenomics. But what you also realize is that what is the dietary value of crops such as finger millet, right? That is where we need to start. And also the corn cylinders, those houses as you mentioned, that litter the African continent. There are so many advantages that you spelled out. That's the advantage of heritage. And also, it gets even so ironic where you see some of the most impressive architectural ensembles, right? The Sun City in South Africa is inspired by Great Zimbabwe. How many buildings were inspired by the pyramids of Egypt and by those walls So we are being told that these things don't work, but then they come back to us, they are repackaged and given to us for high prices. So that's part of also the decolonization. Might want to use that word as part of the awareness and also education. And the other thing is that we also need education. Sorry, we need to interact with the policymakers, right? Not to just talk to ourselves in this room like this, then it ends. We will not change things on the ground. We need to interact with the policymakers. We need to be there at the World Economic Forum when they are talking about, the challenges associated. We can say, hey, this is how heritage can contribute to this. We can also use, the stable isotopes, reconstruct paleoplastic climates, and actually link it to the climate changes in the present. And we can also use some of the biomarkers in some of the crops and say they have inbuilt drought resistance capabilities. So let us grow them. Let us grow for Neo in the Sahel. Let us grow, African rice. It thrives there. If we don't do that, then we will be buying more of our own stuff at very high prices. That's why I like capitalism.
Thank you very much. And I want to welcome both presentations. Probably let me start. My name is Dumiso Ngati, so I'll start with my own sister, Professor. Born and raised from Las and currently here in Oxford. And I really found it interesting, and I wanted to get your thoughts on the change from almost the ethno-nationalism of the Indian woman to more the civic nationalism, where you say they embraced the blackness as opposed to the Indianness in the struggle. So what were some of the issues that informed that, and how was it, as you said, that there were those tensions between, especially that group that had moved towards identifying, which I would say in terms of civic nationalism broadly, vis-a-vis those who still didn't. As you said, there were tensions with the Natal Indian Congress. How were those particularly handled? I also have a question for the Prof as well, but quickly. And that one is one I was interested in terms of our heritage. And I said one day when we were sitting with Dr. Damini Zuma, who actually was very instrumental in that Agenda 2063. And one of the questions she asked was, why is it that I'm told that beads are African? When in my country, I've got the biggest reserves of platinum and gold and diamonds and all of these things. Why are those things not African? Why can't we package that these things are very much African as all the other things? And I mean, if you look at Mapungubwe, these Africans were trading in gold at those times. And this is something very much. So I wondered if you have any thoughts on how we could advance some of these things, which are very much seen as Western, which are very much African, according to us, and we still have the biggest reserves of some of these precious goods to the world market. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I think that's an excellent question. Let me just start by saying that perhaps I'll answer this quite in the context of looking at from a broader perspective, in that we need to look at identity politics. So the first half of the 20th century, we see a great deal of identity politics playing out. So you had, for example, the Italian Indian Congress, the Transvaal Indian Congress, the ANC, and like take for example the ANC. One could not be a non-African could not become a member of the ANC. Similarly, the TIC and the NIC, if you were not an Indian, you could not become a member of it. So it was very much identity politics at that time. Then we also look at the, for example, the 1913 pass laws in the Orange Free State, which was predominantly African women in the Orange Free State resisting against the pass laws. Then if we look at the period 1907 to 1913, in particular the 1913 Satyagraha campaign, it was predominantly an Indian campaign. Similarly, with the 1940s, this is not to say that other racial groups do not support the campaign, but inadvertently it was to a very large extent an Indian campaign. But things began to shift, and one of the reasons why you find that it was kind of why we had this politics of identity in a sense is because the political organizations at that time also were very kind of segregated. While they supported each other, while they knew the levels of oppression, in the context is that they still felt that they needed to keep their so-called political organizations within the framework of the racial groups. But this changed much later, and why women, for example, in the world, for example, you ask people wanting to embrace the Indian tag, because gradually by the 1940s, in 1947, you had the Doctors' Pact. So, this led to greater kind of cordial relations and support between the Italian Indian Congress, the Transvaal Indian Congress, and the ANC, generally the South African Indian Congress. So there was a kind of a shift towards, collective resistance, collective unity, and fighting oppression. And we see this particularly in the Defiance Campaign of 1952, and then the formation of the Federation of South African Women, which is one of the first non-racial, multiracial organizations for women. And so irrespective of which, whether you are an ANC, from the ANC Women's League or from the NIC, TIC, women of all races became a member, became part of that organization. And that collective multiracial resistance was most noticeable, as you're aware, in the 1956, the march to the Pretoria Union buildings, the anti-caste campaigns. And then the 1970s was very, very important, as you know, the Black consciousness movement. And in the 1980s, you can see a wave of resistance because you have the formation of the UDF, etc. So and the Black consciousness movement, women of Indian origin, by then, they were attending universities, well, a small section of them, and their ideas were open, they were open to new ideas, notion of feminism. They were at university, it became a platform for resistance, radical ideas, etc. So they embraced this kind of collective resistance, and they saw themselves as South Africans, not as Indians per se. Mm-hmm. And then by the 1980s, we see the formation of the Natal Women's Organization and the Federation of Transvaal Women, all collectively throughout the country. So we see this kind of collective resistance coming together. And by the 1980s, women began to see themselves as South Africans even much earlier. So yeah, so I think we need to understand it in the context of the socioeconomic conditions of particular historical periods and how that kind of shaped the formation of ideologies and systems.
So as you respond to the next question, I want in the interest of time to pick a question, one question from an online colleague who's asking about young people specifically. So looking at young talents and how we can leverage that in building sustainable economies while we are trying to enrich our culture. Where are the young people? In addition to that question.
You are the young, I can ask you, where are you? But also the good thing about being asked too many questions is you choose the easiest one, you see. So let's start with you, my brother. How shall I phrase it? Unless the lion learns to hunt, the stories that will be here will be the success of the hunters. You know what I did to that lion? I did this, I did that, you know. But if you ask the lion and say, this happened, say, oh, that hunter was running big time. You see. So where am I going with this? Decolonizing development. So when you talk of Mapungubwe and the kinds of circular economy that he linked it to the Indian Ocean, what does the discourse say? The discourse says that Mapungubwe was supplying gold, as you said, right? And it was also getting glass beads. But there's something interesting about the language that is used. Gold is a raw material, right? So Mapungubwe supplies raw materials. Glass beads are manufactured, isn't it? And in return, it gets what? Manufactured commodities, which are glass beads. This is what Africans were doing between AD 1000 and 1300 when Mapungubwe was flourishing. Exporting raw materials and getting manufactured goods. What are Africans doing at the moment? That platinum you were talking about, you export the platinum and you buy some of those imports and then stuff like that. So that's what needs to change. That's what needs to change, to say, no. If you are making gold because it's a noble metal, but if you are talking of iron or copper, which requires manipulation of gases to effect reduction and so on, that's knowledge. So Africa is also contributing knowledge, which is leading to the development of other continents, but we don't see that. So if we flip around that and say, hang on, there was a knowledge economy within Africa, and people were working iron, they were working copper, and they were also having some of these other technologies, which also contributed to the development of other worlds. Then next time, if you are a policymaker, or if I can assume, because you mentioned the name NTZ, and my guess, which can be a wrong one, would be that if you are close to those people, then you also advise them. Then the next thing is also to say to them, hey, we have this heritage which is called platinum. Why don't we add value? We also have this heritage which is coal, and we also have iron ore. Why don't we make steel and also add more value to it, and then become one of these leading manufacturers, rather than going back to say, okay, we export, our iron ore and so on. So in other words, we are not using our own heritage. That would be my short answer to your question. But sorry for going around in circles. That was too confusing. Where are the young people? At home. Anyway, the interesting thing then is that when we talk about heritage, when we talk about inheritances, at what level should we start to teach heritage? Should we start to ensure that I mentioned the phrase, can we catch them young, when I was talking, right? So for us to be able to change the behavior of people, so I mentioned that when I was a kid, Bira was something that he was backward and stuff like that. So even when I am old, I don't like it much. It was backward, you see. But if you catch them young and say, hey, this is heritage, and this is what we need to do. That is where mindset shifts need to begin. That is where transformation begins. So it starts with us as parents. It starts with us as teachers. When we make those podcasts, when we have those Zooms or those digital platforms that are so prevalent nowadays, that's where we must get at the young people and so on. But there's also another difficulty when you are in the academy, right? Can I say that I wrote my book, my small booklet, right? Font size 20 maybe for reception or something like that. And that is to encourage the young people so that they can fall in love with their heritage. And Kevin is my head of department. And then I say, Kevin, here is my portfolio. I want to be promoted to become professor. Will that work? Obviously, no. So there is also a career, a clash between the expectations of a career and what needs to be done in real life. So we also need to align at those divergences to say if one is doing a lot of work, is developing tools, is developing games. That's something that I'm working on at the moment as well. Indigenous African games. How can we ensure that we introduce them to kids and that they start and then play them and even take that one step and then computerize them so that they can also play them on the computer. Then that will also increase and enhance awareness. But even if Kevin would say he will not promote me, it doesn't matter, I'm already a professor. So you can see what I'm saying. It depends on the level where you are in terms of your career and so on. So that's one of the challenges. But if we were to do away with this, give me a day and I would like to spend it with kids.
I'll give you 5 days to spend with kids.
Oh, you saw my kids that way.
In the interest of time, we're at 6 o'clock in Oxford here, and I'm sorry for those online, but this is wine o'clock by our time here, and I want to take this time to really appreciate our fellow our speakers for today. We do have a lot of questions, and we'll have a wonderful time to ask them and have very deep conversations in our reception afterwards. I want to take this opportunity to really big thank you to Kalpana and a big thank you to Shadreck. I want to say a special thank you to our partners in Cross College, Indocs, to ODID Wilson College for making this happen, for making our fellows feel at home, and for supporting the work that AfOx does. And to please, while you're having your wine, please have a look around and enjoy it's a link again with the talk, even though we didn't actually plan for it to be that way, thinking about women and identities as well. Take a look through the exhibition and you can talk to Phyllis and Temi at the back there and give you a bit more information about it. To find out more about AfOx, please go to our website and join the mailing list and get more involved in future events and future activities. We are ever so delighted to welcome you back and look forward to the next one. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.